used to jokingly say I'm like the Sherlock Holmes of marketing, right? I'm really just kind of looking for the nuances. Why? Because ultimately, how do I market to you? I don't know you, right? So I have to learn about you. They think of marketing, and then they go right to tactics.
Yes.
And so when I sit there and say, we're going to spend the next 30 days, digging into your company data, it's very hard for a founder to let go of certain things. And we've gone through some iterations for sure, but what I believe everybody needs isn't necessarily what everybody needs, right? So right there and then they already attaboys, so to speak, right? Because a lot of companies don't do this, and it shows that they're interested in better understanding how they can help their customers do a better job. You have to decide, you're going to let the market define you, or you're going to start changing the market behavior. I appreciate everything you're telling me. This is great insights, and I will use it, but I don't really care, because how many of your services are you going to buy? How many products are you going to buy? You're not the target audience.
Every leader has a story to tell, and the Safe Leader podcast uncovers the diversity story behind leading figures championing change to make our world a better place. Join me, your host, Mark McBride-Wright, as we hear from business leaders, academics, entrepreneurs, and agents of change as they share their journeys of innovation, resilience, and transformation. Together, we explore how they embrace the principles of safe leadership, sharing, acting, feeling, and empowering to create safer, more inclusive environments for everyone. Hello, welcome to the next episode of the Safe Leader podcast. I'm your host, Mark McBride-Wright, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Angelo Ponzi, who is a highly experienced marketing and brand strategist, fractional CMO, keynote speaker, podcast host, and author of The Strategy Blueprint. With a career spanning over 3 decades, Angelo has led marketing, branding, and research initiatives for global brands like Disney, Ericsson, AT&T, and Kendall Jackson, as well as numerous startups and mid-sized enterprises. As founder and president of Kraft, Angelo helps small to medium-sized companies develop research-driven strategies to accelerate growth, maximize ROI, and reduce risk. His work combines deep expertise in customer segmentation, positioning, brand messaging, and integrated marketing execution. Angelo also hosts the Business Growth Cafe podcast, where he explores the challenges and opportunities businesses face in scaling sustainably. With hands-on experience in B2B, B2C, and D2C sectors, Angelo brings a unique blend of strategic insight and creative problem-solving to leadership and growth conversations. Angelo, hello. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Mark. Wow, that was a mouthful.
Yes, I didn't do my vocal warm-up, I must admit, because as you know, I'm a bit late in getting to this recording because I got lost on the New York subway. So thank you for still being around and available to do the recording. So
Yeah.
Your biography has helped me do my vocal warm-up.
There you go. Well, I appreciate the lengthy introduction.
So I was saying to you before we started recording that I've worked with some service specialists who do sort of fractional services for different organizations, but I've never actually worked with a chief marketing officer, a fractional CMO, or a strategist, I guess you're going by, given the title of your book. So tell us a bit about what you do, what keeps you busy.
Yeah, so well, thank you for that. I am, as you said, a fractional CMO, and really where I focus is on the strategy side. Now, I grew up in a lot in the advertising agency business, and throughout that, I went client side and went back to the agency side, and we can explore any of those that you want. So I jumped back and forth because I wanted to know what it was like to be a client. Because, in the agency world, I was always complaining about my clients didn't know anything. And of course, then I got to be a client and learned what they had to go through. But that experience was really terrific. I ventured out a few times during that path. and not to go through the entire story yet, but what I recognized throughout this journey was that where I really liked to focus was getting data, getting
Okay.
information, and dissecting it. Peeling back the onion. I used to jokingly say I'm like the Sherlock Holmes of marketing, right? I really just kind of looking for the nuances. Why? Because ultimately, how do I market to you? How do I market to you, Mark? I don't know you, right? So I have to learn about you. I have to understand what your behaviors are, what's important to you, whether it's B2B, B2C, doesn't matter. We used to go, and there was the days when you go, well, they're a business-to-business person. They're completely different than a B2C person. But we're all people, right? So now we
Yes.
can reach us in all sorts of different ways, regardless of where I sit. So I have to understand what drives you, what motivates you. Why do you purchase a product in the B2B side? Why are you going to invest $500,000 in a new, valve for the oil and gas industry? Because it's not like you can go down to the supermarket and
Yeah.
buy one, right? So, or how am I going to convince you, like somebody's tried to do to me, to walk away from Tide, which is what my mother used. So I've got emotional connection with that, to move on to a new, product to wash my clothes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if I don't know any of those things, I can't market to you. And so I found that during my tenure, if you will, or multiple tenures, that was the most important, because in the creative side you would use this information to come up with your creative executions, but the strong ones were really based on strategy, not just I got an idea, I want something pretty. Even one of the client side journeys was in the research business, but it was an evidence-based research company. And I had no idea what that was. And when they told me, I go, wow, that's fantastic, because why? I'm always believing I got to talk to customers. So they had a process where you never actually had to talk to customers, which was interesting. It was kind of a deconstruction, reconstruction process in this coding. But ultimately, it was about, does the campaign solve or address the strategy issues? And that really kept driving it even more so that I was on the right path. And the time I've invested in doing all that over the years. And then ultimately, when I left that company and started this 12 years ago, I had a choice. Do I become that strategy guy and continue down the path that I really loved? Or do I go become an agency again? Because I had already done that once before. And I decided I didn't want to do that. I didn't want those headaches. I didn't want a bunch of employees.
Okay.
And I liked the idea from previous experiences working with multiple companies. So I got the kind of the best of both worlds. I get to work with multiple companies. I get to do the things I really love from a strategic standpoint, and helping companies address problems, whatever they happen to be.
So you'll work with companies at all levels offering CMO, CSO type services, helping. And do you work mainly in products or in services, or a bit of both?
In both. In both. I don't venture too far into the sales leadership or fractional sales. I have a partner that I bring in, and vice versa, he brings me in. But more of that CMO, and I mentioned earlier, maybe chief strategy officer, because to me it's all about strategy. And sometimes when I talk to companies, they bookend. They forget the chief and they forget the officer. They think of marketing, and then they go right to tactics.
Yes.
And so when I sit there and say, we're going to spend the next 30 days, digging into your company data, and it's like, well, no, we need that social media campaign. And again, I say what I just said to you, and it's like, no, we need to understand. I worked with a company, we did this, and this was about 5 or 6 years ago. I now sit on their board, and we dug into their data, and what we found, for example, that over their 20 plus year history, they win 30% of every proposal. 30% of all their proposals they win. Now the question becomes, which 30% do we want to win? So when you start dissecting the accounts and sales, and one salesperson had 750 accounts, maybe 100 of them or so were really the big revenue drivers, but the rest,
Right.
$1,000 here, $500, well, it added up. And so now, how do we take those accounts that are not generating money. So we brought in an assistant that she could handle those. She got the salesperson got to focus on the bigger business, and she made more money, and we had more success because why we refocused people on how they were selling. Now that was wasn't sales coaching, right? But it was more that strategic shift that impacted the company. And also we had to look at, well, what happens if we get big orders? This was what we wanted. But then I would talk to the inventory people, and they say, well, we don't have inventory that could support an order like that. So we had to now say, okay, we need to think, how quickly can we get stuff out of China or out of Belgium, is where we're getting our other products. There's 6-8 week lead time. Well, that would hurt us, right? Because we can't fulfill the orders.
Yeah.
And so that's when I talk a lot about strategy. It gets beyond, something tactical. In this particular case, it was like, okay, we want to expand across the country, but we can't be shipping product and get it where we need to go. So now we need to look at distribution centers. We put one in the middle of the country. We put one on the East Coast. What are our target audiences? Which vertical markets are generating revenue for us? And when I got there, they had 5 target verticals, but only 3 of them were really generating money. The other 2 had been limping along for years. Yet they were investing.
They'd never cut.
Nobody ever dug into the data. They just were, going, and nobody analyzed stuff. And that's what I'm saying. It's just taking the time to really understand. And then in that particular case, we did research. We interviewed the dealers, their customers, and really started to understand what their expectations were when they bought the product. Then we could shift our messaging from a company-centric route. We have great products and their quality and they'll last, to more of what's going to benefit you. We're going to create, in this particular case, it was malls, so we're going to create memories for your customers. It's a totally different speak. After the same result, a totally different speak. That wouldn't have come about if we hadn't done what we've done. Or working in the wine industry, we worked with a brand, this was years ago, called Callaway Coastal. Well, we're in California. We went coastal. Wow, we'll go down and shoot a lot of pictures on the beach, and that'll be great. And
nice.
then along the way, we're like, well, we really didn't do a lot of research. We just a lot of gut feel. And so we stepped back. We started doing research and found that our perception of coastal is very different from somebody that's on the East Coast or, in the Great Lakes or, the middle of the country or the Gulf of Mexico. So our campaign would have failed. Just by not understanding those nuances of coastal. And then we were able to address that. So again, all came from using research to provide the insights for people to make strategic decisions.
Yeah, I think people are probably too quick sometimes to want to just go straight into action and sort of project what the perceived solution is for the market to the market, rather than just taking the time to figure out, is what you think is the right thing actually the right thing? And then through a process of engagement with your intended customers, which is listening, you're not selling anything, you're listening, you're doing research, right? Market research. Ultimately, what you then come up with is a better solution. And then do you find when clients have done that, they then have higher returns because the people that they consulted with, that they engaged with, actually then want to buy the services or products that have been developed?
Yeah, if you close that loop, I just finished some studies for a company that's in the B2B space, and they got, number one, a lot of recognition. I mean, people were saying, the people I interviewed were saying, let them know we really appreciate the fact that they did this.
Right.
So right there and then they already got some attaboys, so to speak, right? Because a lot of companies don't do this, and it shows that they're interested in better understanding how they can help their customers do a better job. And so we do see a change. As a matter of fact, these research studies I just finished, I'm actually presenting on Thursday, and there's nuances, and I've already been able to apply. I have the insights; they don't have them yet. So I took some of their emails that were fairly generic. We've got the best this, we got the best that, and I applied some of the findings to the emails when I shared it with one of the folks, and they were like, "Oh my God, this is great." we're actually giving, value and give rationale why what we're saying is backed up by now data
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and what we know the customers think about us and all this kind of stuff. So it just really the information, can go across to in our process. Typically we end up doing messaging, and we do overarching messaging and sub messaging and kind of foundational messaging that can apply to any execution. Or even if you're going to craft something new, we now have the structure of what's our character as a brand.
Yeah.
What are the key points that we always have to say?
Yeah.
It's interesting in this process that we go through, internal, external. And one of the questions is, you're in an elevator, you got 30 seconds. How would you describe the company?
Yeah.
If I interview 5 people, if I interview 50 people, I get 50 different answers. Right there's a disconnect. Why? Because all these people are, you hope, talking about you, but they're not actually talking about you. Their answers a lot of times are not very comprehensive.
Right.
It might
Right.
be one point, or there might be just an ongoing rambling. And so part of that process is, how do we get those messages succinct, and whether it's internal sales teams or external customers, to really understand what our value propositions are.
And do you find for the organizations that are successful then in having 50 people in the elevator pitch assessment say the same thing, more or less, are ones where the value state, the mission statement, the value statement, except the vision statement and all that stuff that underpins a company and why it exists, there's a real watertightness around it all, and they show up as that in every service that they deliver, in every product that they make, in every client interaction that they have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's always the goal.
Yeah.
I can't say it's easy, but that's always the goal. So when I look at a business, I look at not only externally, but I look internally. So I have to know, are they in alignment?
Yeah, alignment.
My belief is, I go in and, there's, whatever, the C-suite, and if I don't know how they think internally and, what their kind of perspectives are. So I have an assessment tool that I use, and so part quantitative, part qualitative, and I can see very specifically if there's misalignments or alignments, and then I can point those out, and ultimately it's not up to me, it's up to them to fix things, but I highlight, these are the important, 25% of the things you really need to fix.
Yep.
And there's one case in point, I always use this as an example, because this was a 7-decade-old company. The current management was there about 30 years. And one of the questions was about onboarding, customer and employee onboarding. And it said, do you have whatever the question was, do you have a strong onboarding program? I can't remember now. And the guy responsible for it rated it a 1. The CEO, and he was the number 2 guy in the company, the CEO rated it a 5. And so when I put it on the screen, they looked at each other and said, well, you rated it a 1 and you rated it a 5, and why? And I said, gentlemen, the more important thing is, you guys have worked together for 26 years, and this is now being raised. Yeah. I mean, so I need to know what we're going to fix, what the issues are. So when I present my findings, if we're not in alignment now, we're not going to be in alignment when I show up. And so my goal is to try to figure out what I need to help them change or mitigate or bring in again, I use the word alignment. So when ultimately we get to the end, we all know what we're trying to accomplish. We all know where we're going. We all don't agree on what the kind of the brand positioning is. You think you do? I hear this. This is who we are. Then you go out and talk to customers and you say, describe this company, and it's like, it's totally different.
Right.
So somebody's wrong. You have to decide, you're going to let the market define you, or are you going to start changing the market behavior? And the one thing that it's important to understand, right? It's building a brand, reputation takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Tactics can happen overnight, and they can also hurt the brand building, if you will. And that sometimes is hard for folks to understand, is we can change the perception of your brand. We're going to do this through some of these tactical things, some short-term, mid-term, long-term, but it takes time. And it takes time to build a brand, and we can destroy it in minutes, and it could take
Do the wrong thing.
hours to fix, right? So, or hours to
Fall
destroy.
apart.
Fall
Yeah,
apart. Thank you.
exactly. You're remembered if you have one bad action, you're remembered for that bad action rather than the years of reputation building that you had. I'm listening to you with real interest as a business owner myself, thinking about the process that we've gone through, and even I've gone through as an entrepreneur running a business for 8 years. Um, I was guilty of creating a very bloated product mix, and sometimes the training that I did that really helped me was that sometimes founders can't let go, and that's then what leads to a very bloated product mix, and you continue to do what you've always done, and you keep adding on to your repertoire of stuff. And what we used to run careers fairs, connecting diverse talent with inclusive employers. And it just got to a point where companies weren't spending as much on them. We never quite got the compound growth that I wanted from the events, going from 10 exhibitors to 20 to 40, maxing out venues, scaling the footfall, etc. Um, and actually, they'd served a purpose to get our company name out there, Equal Engineers, our company name out there, as a conduit for diverse talent. But we needed something different. We needed a new way of engaging with the audiences, because business behavior patterns were changing, student behavior was changing, what was wanted, what was needed. So we sunsetted them, as a new phrase that I learned. We sunsetted them, and it was actually quite cathartic as a founder, because I found that I'd lost the joy in them a little bit. I no longer were finding them fun to execute and run, and I'd still enjoyed the buzz and the energy when we did them, but that was a real interest. That was a real learning point for me. And when I'm listening to you now, I'm thinking about the other services that we used to have. And we used to kind of meander between fully business, well, B2B, business fully secured through work that we've done, or public procurement opportunities, so submitting responses to bids, and both have their strengths and both have their weaknesses, and both bring about different types of anxiety if they're not quite going the way you want them to go. And we just had too deep a strategy on too many fronts. We had too many services, and I think on reflection, I think I tried to build a business too quickly that the market wasn't ready for yet. We tried to come up with solutions on recruitment and on leadership development and on student development, and actually some of those services, we had some contracts that we won, some successful placements, but they never really took off. And so I've been on a process in the last year of refining, narrowing back to what is our reason for being. And I'm as I listen to you, I'm questioning. I wonder if actually we've been guilty of going straight to the market with what our perceived solution is to the problem. And the reason we've done that is because we've had anecdotal success with certain clients. But maybe if we were to just engage the market in a sort of fact-finding mission, it might then make sales easier in 3 months' time or so,
Sure.
because we've consulted and engaged with the organizations that we ultimately want to work with, but we're not coming at it from a sales angle. We're coming at it from a we want to hear from you angle to help inform what we're creating and developing.
Yeah, well, I think I'm chuckling inside because I still have some things that I have as in my repertoire that I probably haven't done anything with years, but it's kind of hard to let go. It's very hard for a founder to let go of certain things. And we've gone through some iterations for sure. But it's that getting that perspective of what's important and how they perceive is there. I see it so many times that, especially when I get into like product profitability and things like that. Again, would you call that marketing or accounting or chief financial officer? But I have a process, and I mentioned that it's actually one of the chapters of my book. It's about how do you determine what products are generating sales, generating revenue and profit, which ones you're looking at. It might be generating some profit, but not a lot of sales, and vice versa, generating some sales, or ultimately you've got a bunch sitting around that you just can't let go of because they were maybe what you founded the company with and nobody's buying it, but it's just, sucking up energy or time, and if it's a, physical inventory, right? You got inventory sitting around, it doesn't go anywhere. And so really understanding that kind of a combination, but it's what we believe. What I believe everybody needs is necessarily what everybody needs, right?
Yes.
And so by trying to understand and this kind of exposure, I did this for a meeting. I belonged to an organization, and there were several marketing people, and the guy was like, I hear marketing. I don't really understand what everybody does. And so I put together this map, example, strategy, tactics, sales. And so the people in the room, there was 5 of us, were supposed to highlight where you focus. Mm-hmm. Now, as a CMO, I can do it all. But where I focused is this. One person came in and highlighted the entire, 15, 20 things, which was ridiculous. Another person came in and highlighted the digital. Another person came in and highlighted the sales. But that was, for me, such a simple tool that 9 out of 10 times when I give somebody wants to know what I do, I just bring that up.
Yeah.
And I explain all the differences, and I say, this is where I focus. Very, very succinctly. I do these things. We can do it in fractional. We can do it in projects. But ultimately, I don't care about the right side of the screen. I don't care about the tactical things. Digital, traditional, I don't care. If we can't do this, then I don't know how to make this happen. Mm-hmm. And part of that process, though, is looking at revenue growth plans, because I get this, hey, we've been around for 20 years, we're still $15 million, but hey, we want to be 50 million in 3 more years because I'd like to sell the company. I was like, well, okay, so what are you going to do differently? I know you got cash in the bank. I know, customers are buying your products and services, but ultimately, that's what you've been doing for 20 years. That's not going to get you from 15 million to 50 million. So what are we going to do differently? Back to what I did with that other company. Let's dive in. Let's look at everything. Look at inventory that we have.
Into the data.
It's really just digging in and understanding, because then once I know where you want to go, once we know how you got to where you are, and really know your customers and know all these kinds of things, then we can lay a strategy that says, to get there, these are the channels, these are the paths, these are the things you need to do, these are the short-term, mid-term, longer-term things. You have to kill these product lines or kill these services, or you have to add these. One of a company I worked with recently, or a couple of years ago, in doing their work and talking to their customers, what we found is they dealt with engineers, that the older engineers were getting ready to retire the next 2 or 3 years of the time. So let's say 5 years. The younger engineers, 25, 50, actually didn't like them very much because they didn't have any environmentally friendly products or sustainable products. Right. Everything was old, not old, but traditional products.
Yeah.
And so by recognizing that, they had a product shift. Well, now they had to go find new suppliers, and because they were really a rep organization. So find new suppliers that are already taken by all their competitors, and really kind of change some of their infrastructure.
Interesting.
In order to continue on. If they hadn't actually asked those questions, they might not have ever known until their people started retiring. And so also from a strategic standpoint, it was like, okay, we need to get these younger engineers on our side.
Yeah.
We can't do that unless we have a project, right? We got to go out and we got to educate them and talk to them and things like that.
It speaks to employee retention as well. Yeah. It's like a changing in the value set of what's important to your current workforce. And of course, when you've got an intergenerational workforce like we tend to have more so in engineering relative to other sectors, because as you say, there's people that are long time served in engineering. there's different habits, there's different viewpoints, different perspectives. It's diversity, right? It's diversity of background, of upbringing, and perspective on where the future is. So I'm interested to understand a bit more about the different types of cultures that you've worked with in different sectors, or in high risk industries, or engineering centered organizations. Do you find there is a greater propensity to embrace strategic thinking like this, or because engineers are we're quite number focused and data focused, we like working with data.
Right.
So do you tend to find us an easier audience to work with when you're doing a project?
Honestly, it's a personality thing.
Okay.
I just started working with a company, very engineering driven, a few months ago, and when they were coming on to talk to me, because originally the call was, we need a website, and I told them, the people that were recommending me, that yeah, I can help them, but that's I'm not going to start there, but if they're open to it, I'd love to talk to them, tell them what I do. I'm happy to make a referral, but let me and the CEO of the company came on, which I had not expected.
Okay.
And so I brought up my little chart, and I was telling him what I do. And got to remember, he wants a website, not even a new website. He wants it refreshed.
Right.
And at the end, he went, I want that. I
Great.
get it. I get it. If I'm just going to tell you what I think should be changed, why do we need you? Right? And I go, exactly. I mean, like we were like, simpatico, right? We just were like, yes. Why do you need me? Same thing. I tell people, at the end, and they go, well, we think we're going to go in a different direction. So wait, you just spent 90 days doing this new plan, and if you weren't going to listen to me, why'd you hire me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I'm here because there's a problem, not because everything is wonderful.
yeah.
I mean,
And
whether
you're
it's
there.
whether it's an employee change. I was brought into a company in the consumer side a few years ago because the CMO left, and the team didn't like him, and there was a lot of disorganization. A lot of people were quitting. There was just, and that was like a full service agency inside this company. It was like 15 to 20 people.
Right.
And so part of my assignment was get these people to like each other again and to work together. And so when I got there, I called everybody in a meeting, and I sat down because they didn't know me. I'm the new guy, right? They're all going, okay, what's this guy going to do? And I said, here's my thinking, here's my plan, here's what I'd like to do. I was literally looking at their whiteboard, and it was very sketchy on stuff that was going on. So there's no real plan here. And then I sent the group out after lunch, one by one. Come on in, let's talk. So what's going on? Tell me what the issues are. Why does this board look like this? And at the end of the day, I had a pretty clear picture of who the players were, who were the ones who were really working, who were the ones that were just going to be, the worker bees,
Yep.
and understood the dynamics of what happened to the CMO and the relationships with him previously.
Right.
So I knew right off the bat I could change those things. And so again, the goal was to, talking about people dynamics, right? I have to understand how people work. And then, 15 feet away were, 25, 30 salespeople. And I need to understand their process. And I need to understand where we got the inventory from and what happens if we're marketing products that don't exist. So there was just
You've inspired me to maybe reach out to our top 20, 30 sort of target customers, or organizations we work with on and off, and really try and figure out what value can we add. What are your current pain points that you're struggling with? Not from a perspective of we want to come in and solve that, but actually, like, I've always valued being a dot joiner, being a kind of integrator as a small medium enterprise, sort of, because when you work in a big companies are still all consuming as a single entity. And of course, there are many of these single entities that then make up the engineering sector. And what often happens when I find we work with our big organizations is that it's like a mini universe, just
Hmm.
one company, and there's all these mini universes. But what gets missing is the conversation between these mini universes, and that's where talent moves between or falls out completely from the overall universe. And so what I'd like to try and look for is patterns of similarity that come up in cultural barriers or enablers in terms of progressing underrepresented groups or retaining talent. And I think maybe we've been too quick to sort of project a solution on to all of these micro entities and actually just having a conversation to see if our to test our hypothesis if
Hmm.
what we think a solution is. So like the Safe Leader, right? This podcast, it's part of my book, the Safe Leader book. Safe stands for share, act, feel, empower. And fundamentally, what I believe is that we need to get more men talking about their difference, talking about their diversity story. So if we get more people being little metaphorical lighthouses that talk about what they've been through, their trials and tribulations, because men are not doing that at the moment, we'll then have an increased probability of people that can then relate to one another. And so we can bring down the high rate of suicide and self-harm that we have in engineering, which is actually a large cause of the loss of life in the sector. And my big picture transcendent kind of vision is this a way to architect a conversation for a more integrated humanity in a world of very polarized politics and division and them and us? Is this a way to like sort of bring people together no matter what their beliefs and backgrounds are? Because ultimately we're all human at the core. And I think people get too are too caught in their day to day to even be thinking that broadly or thinking that big picture. And maybe I'm jumping the gun too much with how I'm trying to sort of build my legacy with equal engineers. And
Well, I think
I don't know.
that, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's that saying, working in versus on the business, right?
Yeah.
And you've got a kind of an overarching concept, and it sounds a little bit, not that we're that it's more of a top down,
Yes.
right? And versus let that's the goal. But let's build it up from the bottom, and by understanding through conversation and digging into what the issues are, it's going to
Yeah.
help you figure out better ways to solve it. You might think it's X, but the reality is it's X and Y together that
Yes.
cause the problem, and you only get to know that by talking or survey work, whatever it happens to be, and focus groups.
Yeah.
There was a period of time when focus groups were like a major, and I'm sure they are. I just haven't done them in years, but I've probably done over 200.
Yeah.
But I probably haven't done one, and I don't think I've done one in 10 years, because number one, they got too expensive, but number two, they're just, I can get at these dynamics a little bit different, right? You can do online focus groups, you can do smaller groups, 3, 6 people. But I find the one-on-one interviews are much more constructive, because
Definitely.
it's like we're doing here on the podcast. I say something, you say something, we can go down a path, right?
Yes.
It's not a quantitative study. It's not check the box, do the drop down. I'm not going to ask you too many open-ended questions,
Yeah.
because I can't. It's going to make the time go up, and plus I'm going to get a lot of gobbledygook that now I
Yeah.
have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what it meant. And so the kind of that one-on-ones for me anyway has replaced the focus groups, because it's
Interesting.
hard to get people into a room, but it still works. And those dynamics are really interesting, and because you can start to understand what someone's background is and the way they react and the way they say things,
Yes.
that allows you to probe. And the probing part is very dynamic, because
Yes.
ultimately you know what you're trying to accomplish, but you can also use that to bring out emotion or whatever it happens to be. And I've done some, I
Yeah.
mean, I've worked in a lot of, with teens. I've worked with in food and beverage and all sorts of things. But I worked in doing a lot of financial groups and talking to people's money. People get very emotional when we talk about their money and their banks and what's happening in, down the road and their concerns about life. I've done stuff in women's health, which was really interesting considering it was a group full of ladies and me asking very personal questions.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get past the mental thing that I was doing this.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but I think that if you kind of step back and say, what can I do different? And so part of my background over the year, in the beginning has always been research and foundation of research. And, when I first started this, it was like, I got the research flag. It's like, everybody's going to do research and, I'm going to help you do a better job. But what I found very quickly, and I'm finding this with AI right now, people want the solution. Give me the solution. Give me the application. Tell me how it's going to benefit me.
Yes.
I don't care how you get there. They care, but you know what I'm saying?
They want it faster.
They want it faster, but if this is what I'm trying to solve for, or you're trying to solve for, and all these things underneath that are the pillars, whatever you want to call them, that make this happen, that has to happen first.
Yeah.
Versus going right to the end or going top down and telling everybody how it's done.
Yeah.
If that made sense.
It does, because it means then that so I guess the risk of what you face is there's a lower willingness to engage in the process that you like taking them through. So you have to then spend more time advocating for having patience to do the process, because from experience it's going to yield a greater impact. It's going to work. You're going to get there. You're going to get a solution that will solve the problems rather than a quick fix.
I can honestly say in almost 12 years of this company doing my process and doing what I do, I can honestly say at the end of the day, I went, yep, everything you told me is exactly the same, and we got no benefit out of it. Never happened, because there's always something. Why? Because guaranteed they have not done a competitive analysis.
Yeah.
Maybe they did it for their strategic meeting, which I actually have clients that go, we don't do that stuff. And they probably last time they talked to their customers was never. Why? Because the salespeople talk to the customers and they're telling us all this stuff. Yeah, but they're also telling you maybe with a little bias.
Yeah.
But one of the statement I use a lot, and I'll tell you because I think it applies, is when I'm working with a company and they're telling me things, and to get them to understand what I say is, I appreciate everything you're telling me. This is great insights, and I will use it, but I don't really care, because how many of your services are you going to buy? How many products are you going to buy? You're not. You're not the target audience. So I need to talk to the target audience to figure out what they want in order to provide insights. And it doesn't matter if you've been in business for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. The dynamics change. One of the slides I use right off the bat in some of my presentations is we have to understand the motivations and behaviors. And every day we're bombarded with politics, finance, family, weather, events, all sorts of things that change and influence who we are on a daily basis. And if I don't have my finger on the pulse of what's going on, how do I address that? And so I always also say to companies, it's not a one and done. Just because I'm making a presentation on Thursday to one of my clients, and there's one more kind of the end of the road with all the messaging and everything else. That's the day we should be starting again. Not the same process, but we can't let that go. Otherwise, it's a year from now, and you say, okay, this company's never done anything like this, right? So, and it's hard for people to understand that I have to look at my competition on a regular basis, or I have to stay in communications. I worked with a software company who radically changed the way they were a custom software, radically changed the way they did their builds. And stuff that they used to charge for, they were able to actually package it and offer it as part of the services.
Right.
And in doing research, I found that they loved, I forget her name, Becky. That's the person they talked to. But they hadn't talked to management in 5 years. And some of these clients were getting ready to terminate them. Right. And then they had those new services, and when I would bring it up, people would go, I have no idea what you're talking about. So my number one recommendation when coming out of all that work was build a new PowerPoint presentation. You two, CEO and president, get on a plane and go visit every one of your key customers. Do a road show. And they did. And they were able to solve some of the problems that their customers that were getting ready to can them. And they were able to eventually, do more new business, and
you've inspired me. I'm moving back to the UK soon. Next week actually.
You are. Okay.
So I want to go and visit my customers. Yeah, because I've been away for a year and not sort of at the coal face of that side of the business, which I enjoy, which I love.
Yeah, it's important, and and there's no reason not to, especially considering we can do this, right? We can hop on a call. So, most of my customers now are local, but for a while they were all out of state, and even though I would physically only go there once a quarter, I was on the Zoom with them every week.
Yeah. Where are you based? Where are you based out of now?
I'm in California.
In California.
Southern California.
Very nice. Nice weather all year round.
Mostly, but yeah.
So we went straight into just a technical conversation for the whole time. I never got to find out about your younger self and your motivations to do what you do, and what I feel like I'm missing that information. Enlighten me. Are you doing now what you always thought you would do, or did you think?
No, I always thought I was going to be Superman, but
right. You film out. You can go and see.
I did see it already. Actually, I was there day 2.
Committed.
Yeah, I grew up a Superman fanatic, but I switched to Batman over the years. But Superman, if it's out, I watch it. And anyway, what's interesting, I can't say that as a younger me was like, I want to be a marketing guy.
Yeah.
But I certainly was a consumer, and when I went to school and going through marketing and business, my goal actually was to work in a film studio.
Nice.
as a marketing person, not an actor. I couldn't. I mean, I was very introvert at that point in time in my life. I couldn't stand in front of people, and so I knew. So I grew up and went school in New York and Europe. I went to school in London actually. At the Polytechnic, which is now called Westminster University, I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I went to school there, and then I came back and I finished up in New York. But in my senior year, my sister, who lived in California, does live in California, her friend's husband was a mucky muck at Disneyland. And he said, when you graduate, come out, I'll take care of you. And
that we
done. I got on a plane 1 week, came out. Well, I'm a New York Italian, and if you know New York Italians because you've been living there, you say something, it means something. Yeah. Apparently, out here in California, it didn't mean anything. So they basically gave me a couple names and gave me a little facetiously a little pat in the butt and said, "Go have it, get out there and go get them." So it was a struggle because I didn't know anybody. So I literally every day I lived in Santa Monica. Every day I drove into Hollywood and in Burbank and basically knocking on doors. And after a while, my sister had another friend who said, hey, he's got a marketing agency, advertising agency in Orange County. He said, go meet him, which I did. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you an internship, get you started, make you some money and teach you about media and stuff like that. So immediately I was right into analyzing media numbers, right? And so that was kind of the first inclination that I liked dealing with all that stuff. And, when you go to school, you get all these great classes and all of a sudden it's, how do I actually apply it?
Yes. Yeah.
And then I left there and went to a small creative studio. But right off the bat, they went, we're going to work with you on how do you develop a marketing plan. Okay. And so literally they taught me the importance of planning.
Your marketing.
And so right off the bat, I was there about 2.5 years, and they were just constantly, write the plan. No, this is why it doesn't work, and da da da. Because we use that plan to do our creative, and so I kind of really saw it there. I took a short venture into my first new business venture. So I was probably somewhere around 23ish, I think, maybe 23 and a half. We had been doing a lot of television commercials, which of course was great for me because I got to actually get a little taste of Hollywood. But the two people I worked with convinced me that we could start our own production company, and it would bring Hollywood to Orange County.
Right.
What do I know? I'm wet behind the ears.
Big and ambitious.
Big and ambitious, and no strategy, by the way, not a single one behind it. We opened our doors and had our first job like within 2 weeks, and it was great. We were doing all this work, and then all of a sudden they were like, "Well, we're not coming in the office today. We're not doing this," and they started to disappear on me. So 8 months in and out, went up and cliff. I mean, a big cliff, crashed and burned. I thought maybe I wanted to be a creative director at that point in time. So a friend of mine was an illustrator, and I went over there and he said, "Look at, you're in between jobs, and let me show you some stuff." And so I would do some work with him, and he basically came to me after a couple of weeks and says, "You suck. You can't draw a straight line with a ruler. This is not you. You go back to the stuff you're really good at." And so I ended up with an agency called Bozell, which is was a large firm at the time. So then I was there. Same thing. I walked in, and now I'm the account guy, but I'm also doing all the planning for all my clients. So now I'm really starting to utilize the tools, and again, just recognizing that the creative really should be dependent. There was a lot of that siloed stuff at that point in time,
right,
where the creative and the marketing people were always fighting, and I recognized that, and so it was like, how do I get past this? That was kind of a personal goal, is to find teams that could work together. I can't say we actually accomplished it there, but then I went client side, and now I'm in charge.
Yeah.
And so I could start to force things the way I wanted to.
Curate the culture, between
created
the group.
a different culture, and ironically, the agency was still my agency, so now they looked at me as that nasty marketing manager. So I was there for a while and got to really experience data. I was in charge. I was in the oil and gas industry at the time. I was doing rig tracking and doing all this data analysis and distribution of product. So I got to see, I'm used to guy doing ultimate product was creative. Now all of a sudden my product is stats.
Yeah.
So that was a really good experience. And then I got the bug to go back to an agency, and so I ended up courting this one agency for about a year, and I finally got the job, and then I went in and back to the agency world, and I was there, started as an account guy and ended up being the number 2 VP, and I wanted to buy it. He wanted to retire. I wanted to buy it. I put together a little consortium. Turned out to be there was another group from our Northern California office that was also putting together a consortium to buy it. And so then we started fighting, and then we settled. I got the advertising side. She got the PR side, and then he reneged on the deal.
Oh no!
And so that I was a little upset about that, and so I was like, I'm done. And I had been kind of nosing around. This friend of mine, who I at Bozell, started an agency. She got wind that me and my team were looking to move. She brought us there. We were there about a year. But during that time, I started thinking, do I really, my parents were entrepreneurs. So I was like, I don't really like working for people per se.
Yeah.
And so I went out and I talked to a lot of my competitors at the time. I said, what if you could have someone like me as a freelancer, contract work, doing your research, your planning, and all 10 of them said, man, we'd hire you on day one.
Brilliant.
Not a single one did. And so it took me about 45 days to get my first job, which was actually writing a letter for like $125. And
great feeling though, isn't it? It's a great feeling.
It was.
Like that first bit of money from that first training session or writing a letter or whatever it was, 200 words, it's that, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
like
I
when
was
you're a
there, right?
kid
I
and you get
arrived.
yeah, exactly. It's such a great feeling.
And then it just started to snowball. My wife was working for a advertising agency in their media department, and she introduced me. Hey, here, meet my husband. He's a freelancer. And next thing you know,
Brilliant.
this guy's hiring me, and and just another one, and that went on for about 5 years, and it was great. I only had one rule. I had about 12 agencies I worked for,
Right.
which was a lot, but 12. And the rule was, whoever calls me first for a new business pitch gets me.
When you have availability.
Yeah.
Or did you work
Or
on a
yeah,
few
if I had
projects at
availability,
once?
right?
Yeah.
But normally
Yeah.
it was the agencies I was working for that would bring me in.
Got you.
But right over about a 6-week period, I got screwed twice by these two of the agencies.
Right.
And they reneged on their deals, and I put a lot of time. I wasn't really fairly compensated because the prize was I get to do all this work if we win, and we
Yes.
did win. And then it was like, well, why am I doing this for these people? I'm just going to start my own. So it was purely marketing, doing research and planning. And then all of a sudden I'd say, hey, do you guys do PR? Yeah, of course we do. And I get a PR person. Hey, do you do media buying and planning? Yes, we do. We had a PR, but actually it was my wife. I convinced her to quit her job. She was the director of marketing at a fast food chain at the time.
Right.
She came over. She became the media planner. And then, do you need, what else do you need? We're adding these folks. And then they would say, what about creative? And I said, well, no, we'll partner with people because I don't want to be tied down, because I wanted to get into consumer and B2B and all these things. And I didn't want to have just one group focused.
Right.
So over the next 10, 12 years, we built a firm. But it was right in the last 2 years that a friend of mine called me and said, I met a creative firm today in a pitch. They didn't win because they didn't have any marketing. And I think they're a good team for you.
Good strategic fit.
And so we got together, and at the same time, quick side, I also started and ran a research company in the action sports industry. So I'm running an agency and I'm running this research company as well. And so this creative team and I, we got together, and our team and their team, and I'm not kidding, we couldn't look at a piece of business that came our way and we would win it. So all of a sudden we're winning all this business.
Wow.
And then this large PR or large advertising agency, independent agency in Los Angeles came and approached us both. They bought us both and put us together into a new firm.
Oh, interesting.
And so I like to say we started from scratch, because some of our clients didn't like the idea. Now we're part of a $1 billion organization, even though we were not $1 billion.
Yep.
They just saw silos and big expenses, and they were wrong.
Yeah.
But so we went to 0 to 28 million in 8 years,
Right.
and then they decided to absorb us.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to move, and a bunch of us didn't want to move, and so all but 3 of our staff, only 3 went, and they quit, I think, within 3 months, and within 6 or 7 months they lost all $28 million of our business.
No.
Because it was different, right? We went from this very linear strategy. Now
Yeah.
they were being siloed. You want to talk to a media, in our group, you want to talk to a media person, you can talk to anybody.
Yeah,
As a matter of
yeah,
fact, we'd create teams that, regardless of what the account called for, like with one particular account, like no media, it's strictly creative and marketing. Well, we had the media person involved, and they were part of the pitch. Why? Because eventually what we do is going to go to media, and we wanted to show them how it works. And at the end of the day, we won the media business, and it happened all the time. Our structure now, all of a sudden, is like, here's media, here's marketing, here's research, here's account service.
A big model that doesn't apply to the small boutique sort of service that you'd curated.
Exactly. So then after that, and we decided not to go, I went client side again, and that was a kind of evidence-based research company I talked about earlier, and I was there about 2.5 years, 3 years, and And I was told by the recruiter, oh, it's mom and pop, they're, 30 years old, and there could be opportunities for equity and blah, blah, blah. 6 months into it, they sold.
Right.
And it sold to a technology company. And they were after, we had government and commercial, and I was on the commercial side, but they wanted our government side, but they also inherited the commercial side. And over the years, they just didn't understand what we did, because they were after government, their contract win was, $400 million. My contract win might be $50,000 out of Disneyland, right?
Yeah. Completely different.
So they didn't understand it. And so, it is a funny but not funny story. So a new CEO comes in. So I'm in the last 30 or 40 days of me being there. But then I didn't know I was going to quit, right? So new CEO comes in and he wants to hear presentations. So I'm making a presentation from him, which I never made to anybody else. The old CEO was sitting next to me. And when I was done, he leaned over, he goes, wow, that was really fascinating. I had no idea. What I wanted to say was something more than, oh, thank you. It's like, you've known me for 2.5 years and you never once understood what we did. But about let's say a month later, give or take, whatever the dates are, the new CEO made a huge presentation to the entire staff about the future of the company. I really appreciated that. That was fantastic. They were letting us in the inner circle.
Yeah.
However, at the end of the meeting, I raised my hand and said, I didn't see my division up there. And I could see the panic on his face and oh, well, you guys are tucked into this group.
Yeah.
And I came home and I said to my wife, it's like, I can't do this anymore. If you're okay with it, I'm going to go back and be me. Yeah. So I quit and started this, and it's just shy of 12 years.
Congratulations. Amazing.
Well, that's my long-winded history, but the bumps in the road and the things that work and the things that don't work, and
they shape
my first business, right? It failed miserably. I mean, there was a point in time, I'm 23, I'm working maybe in the first few months, I'm only working, let's say 15 days a month, and I'm making more money than I ever had. And all of a sudden, 8 months later, I could barely go to McDonald's. Yeah. But that learning lesson about working with partners and running a business. I mean, at a point in time, they go like, well, you just run the business. Like, I've never run a business in my life.
You learn so much through failure, so much. You learn through doing, through failing, through iterating, and through growth. That's how you get personal growth. Absolutely. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So can I give you one more real quick?
Yeah, sure. Then we're going on the quick fire questions.
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, growing up, I was probably a little more of an introvert. But when I came to California, and I won't give you the big story, when I came to California, I played in a band. And I was a drummer. And I was always, when I played drums, I was always like, 10 feet behind everybody, because I didn't want to be anywhere near the audience.
Yeah.
And we were practicing one day, and we had girl singers in the band, and one of them was standing next to me, and I was singing along with the song. And she said, why don't you sing? And I go, I can't sing, and I can't. No, you can sing. I said, well, I can't stand in front of people. Long story short, she got me up to sing. That moment changed my trajectory. I now I'm on podcasting. I'm doing public speaking. For that moment, which was now, 25, 30 years ago, changed how I interact and what I do. And
you enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed public speaking and doing these and
I love it.
Having that standing in front of people. Yeah. Versus, again, if I go back to when I was a kid, I would have never thought that.
Apparently, there's a stat that it's like the most feared thing, even more so than the fear of dying. Like, is the fear of public speaking. And I just I love it. I love public speaking. I just love it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay, quick fire question round. So, what's the best piece of leadership or marketing advice you've ever received?
It's going to sound probably not real strategic marketing, but it's pay it forward.
What's one campaign or brand story you're most proud of?
Jackson Family Wines.
What's one skill every CMO should develop in today's climate?
Insights into how to do analytics and read data.
Coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee.
What's your go-to productivity hack when deadlines are tight?
You know what? I tune everything out. I turn off my calendar. I turn off my emails. Close the doors, and just focus.
One business or marketing thinker that inspires you?
I do this. I say this all the time. It was Jim Collins' The Good to Great. It was probably one of the books that I really kind of go to. But earlier on, it was actually I enjoyed reading Sun Tzu.
What was that?
The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
What's one thing you do to unwind or recharge after a big project?
Probably play music. I play.
What's the most surprising thing people learn when working with you?
That I'm a collaborator and open communicator.
What's a book or resource you often recommend to your clients?
Oh, I'd have to be my book.
You can have that. And finally, what advice would you give your younger self just starting out in advertising?
That's a tough one. Be patient.
Be patient. That's a good one to end on. Very good advice. Thank you so much, Angelo. If people want to get in touch with you, if they want to find your book, how can they do that? We'll put information in the show notes.
Sure. Best way is probably through LinkedIn.
Okay.
Through LinkedIn, all my stuff's there in the contact form. You can get to my website or any of that. I have some free ebooks. I have a free mini marketing course there. I have some videos. The book is actually there as well, but it's going to take you to Amazon, which is where the book is. It's either paperback or a Kindle.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put it up there, and I'm hoping you'll get some click-throughs after people have listened to this. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Thanks. You have been listening to the Safe Leader podcast, uncovering the diversity story behind leading figures championing change to make our world a better place. If you have enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the Safe Leader podcast on your podcast platform of choice and get notified when a new episode goes live. Did you know that we also offer a full transcript on each of our podcast episodes? Check out my website, markmcbridewright.com. Here, you can also explore the training, coaching, and keynote speaking services I offer. And whilst you're there, why not join the Safe Leader community by subscribing to the Safe Leader Insights mailing list? Thank you for listening, and please come back and join us on a future episode.